up, fuzzball.
From Down Under.
Do. Or do not. There is no try.
G'day, mate. How you going? All right, folks, we're going to talk about the upcoming Solo, a Star Wars story, of course, Blu-ray, which is going to be launching in Australia next week here, and I can't wait. Of course, this is the most solid Disney/Lucasfilm production so far, since it's being bought, obviously, from George and given to the Disney company. We've seen, obviously, a number of different films, and I think this is by far the strongest. Now, with the film that really is at its heart a Western, it's a film that really gets to the heart of the character of Han Solo. It gives us quite a little bit more about where he's come from, of course, where he's thinking, and just about where he's going. You really get that sense of direction. Of course, we get Lando Calrissian in it, and we're going to talk about that today with Darth Taxus from Starships, Sabres, and Scoundrels, which I've been meaning to have on the show ever since we've started this as a guest. He's going to be somebody that's going to be both insightful and, of course, entertaining. His show's fantastic, and he's the co-host with two other hosts covering everything from comics to books to the films themselves and everything in between. You really got to go and check it out. And, of course, it's part of the Retro Zapped line of great shows. We've got the great range of shows. I think Techno Retro Dad's obviously over there, and you've got also the amazing June podcast over there too, which is just a lot of fun, which is called Junecast. So go and check it out. But tonight we're really going to be getting into Solo, and in a big way, talking about some of the characters that I think they really should have maybe been around a little bit longer, maybe give a few more scenes, like Val, for example. I think Val needed a little bit more, but then again, you got to make room for both, obviously, Han and the other characters. Ria Durant is one of my all-time favourite little characters in, Star Wars. Here he comes in this Stormtrooper outfit, hidden, and, you just don't know what to make of it, of course. A very famous director plays him. I'll let you guess that. Of course, he's working on the live-action Star Wars TV show. And, of course, one of my favourite things of this film in terms of design and everything, of course, is the Cloud Riders, which really goes and gives you both something that I think is action-packed warriors, but at the same time really falls into the Saw Gerrera line of, rebels, which we get to see towards the end of the film. So really can't wait to get into this. It's episode 10 of the Fantha from Down Under. I hope you really enjoy the show tonight because we're going to have a lot of fun. All right, let's get into it. All right, here on the Fantha from Down Under, it is time to chat about some of the new publications that you're going to be finding around the place here in Australia. Now, I've mentioned it many times on the show. Out here in Australia, we are in the Outer Rim. We're in the Tatooine of Earth. That's right. This was one of those things. It's just one of those crazy points where you think, well, something comes out, whether it's Empire magazine or it could be the latest comics from Marvel, whatever it is. One of those things comes out, you've just got to see it. It's one of those crazy points where 3 months later, you'll see it in Australia. That's right. Whether it's Total Film Magazine, any of those great UK publications. And I've got to say, hats off to Empire itself. Empire is probably the greatest when it comes to news. And they cover quite a bit of Star Wars for you Star Wars fans out there and their dear pals of Fantha Tracks. And speaking of course, we've got the latest Empire's just hit the shelves, and it is a huge issue on Shane Black's horror/action film that is coming out very soon, which is next week out here in Australia as well. Same week as Solo, a Star Wars story. Isn't that great? This is a Solo Alien too. This is, of course, The Predator. And The Predator is back. Shane Black directing, and of course, it looks like it's to revitalise the franchise. A little bit of Star Wars news in this magazine too. It's a one-page spread talking about the possibilities of where the actual story should go for J.J. Abrams' third and final part of the sequel trilogy. What's going to happen with Kylo Ren? Is he going to be, a drunken old bum in the First Order pub? Or we're going to see him rule and perhaps go to the light side of the Force, sacrificing himself? Who knows?
G'day mate, how you going? This is Adam O'Brien, the Fantha from Down Under. And like George Lucas, there's another George out there. That is George Miller, and he created an amazing franchise by the name of Mad Max. On Fandom Podcast Network's Couch Potato Theatre, in a 4-part episode series, I host Maximum Couch Potato, looking at all of the films in the franchise, along with Kevin the Raider Nerd Reitzel and Kyle Wagner. We look at each of these films. We've done 1979's Mad Max. We've also done The Road Warrior, or known out here in Australia as Mad Max 2. But soon, airing on the show, we have our look at Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, the huge international epic which teamed Mel Gibson and Tina Turner together and had an amazing soundtrack. So go and check it out. Our look at Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome on Fandom Podcast Network.
Joining me here tonight, all the way from Texas in the United States of America, is the one, the only, Darth Taxus, one of the co-hosts of the amazing podcast Starship, Sabres and Scoundrels. Welcome to Fantha Treks, the Fantha from Down Under, brought to you live at Quinlan's Cantina from Gold Coast of Australia. I'm your host, Adam O'Brien, and joining me all the way from Texas in the United States of America is a podcaster which, if you haven't listened to his show yet, he's the co-host of one of the great Star Wars podcasts. It is an entertaining show, but also what I think is a very insightful show when it comes to Star Wars content. That is, of course, Starships, Sabres and Scoundrels, the one, the only, Darth Taxus. Mate, how are you?
Oh, fine, thank you. And thank you for telling everybody the truth just now. I appreciate you knowing all that. But all kidding aside, it is fun, and I really appreciate that. That's very high praise. And, if it wasn't for the combined work with Dennis Keithley and Jay Krebs, really, it's as one of my friends put it, if I just listened to you, I'd have no clue what you're doing or talking about. So I appreciate them being the anchor to a certain to my, I guess, drifting boat, if I make a boat reference.
That's great. You three make a wonderful team. And, I've been a listener for the show for a good fair while now, at least a good year. And what I love about the show is the fact that it's covers every little stretch of Star Wars, whether it's the comics, you guys cover the films, and then, of course, your own extrapolations on what you like about the series as well. But also, I think the thing is, it's entertaining chat because you all help each other out. If one person's brought up something, you go, oh, well, that's an interesting idea. How about we see it this way? And it's natural conversation that, to me, feels like, same sort of chat if you're having Star Wars chat at a coffee club or something like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, thanks. And, that's what it does remind me of. That's what a lot of the podcasts actually remind me of is when we were kids. And I remember I belonged to this organization called Starships. And it was just like a local science fiction fantasy club. And, you had guys in there that were maybe 40 years older than us, and you had like kids our age, and we had our own conventions, we'd get like the rec center and, somewhere, we'd have gaming tournaments and, so you'd be role-playing game, Battletech, going on. And, Battletech. I was a huge Battletech P1. And so that's what all this kind of scene reminds me of, is going to the Mr. Gaddy's Pizza and, watching the latest episode of Star Trek, The Next Generation, and then talking about it. And one of the first times I actually led a discussion was my friend Aaron Lee, who's a artist in Boulder, Colorado now, and actually he's about to release his first graphic novel that he's been working on. He's been working on it for quite a while. It's been a labor of love, so I'm excited to read it finally. But he and I had to lead a Star Wars discussion back during the dark times when there really wasn't much out there. And So it's kind of like, Star Wars, crickets. It's kick ass, am I right? Yeah, and everybody at the table. So you had to kind of learn how to work the crowd a little bit. But, we had the West End games back then. And so that was, by and large, what I read just cover to cover over and over again. And that's why I really love what Lucasfilm is doing now, because I know that a lot of the people in play are influenced heavily from the West End games, source books, the stories. In fact, yes, Mr. Hidalgo himself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if you go back and you read some of those old source books, it kind of gives you a little insight to what's happening now.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does. What I love about those old source books, and quick little Easter egg for you guys out there that don't know, I played the games in high school myself, like many of you guys probably have as well out there. And one of the things is, as we all have as fans, we get, I think, little outlets, whether it's computer games, in this case role-playing games, but I never actually held a copy of the West End games myself. We had the character sheets, had friends had the books, but it was until I think about 1999 or maybe 2000, where I was at, basically it was a second-hand shop. Walked in there and I saw these little books in the corner. It kind of looked like colouring in books. I went, what is that? And anyway, for $20 in a box was the entire line of West End books. I've got sitting on the shelf there, the entire lot, $20, and nobody could actually even figure out, is that real? Is that really the? And we went through it. We even had the revised editions in there. But I mean, what a gem of a find, I tell you.
Yeah, the only thing that was a little unstable to me was the whole D6 system of, and then I couldn't wrap my kid head around, if you use the dark side, like the force choke, you gain a dark side point and you're on the road. You've ruined your character basically. And I'm like, well, Luke did it, but he didn't. Maybe I misunderstood the rules, but I don't know. It just seemed like they were kind of like saying, like, like Yoda said, once you use the dark side, forever it'll consume you,
Oh, yeah. I mean, the thing is, D6 was never something I was, I'm a D20 boy. Always been a D20 boy when it comes to, Dungeons and Dragons and obviously Wizards of the Coast, Star Wars, which was probably my big one. Before, gotta say, the new game, and I'll talk to you about that soon, because I think the game is just absolutely brilliant.
Awesome.
But the D6 system, what really got me about it was that I didn't worry too much about the way the mechanics worked. It was more about characters for me then, and some of the great story like Darkstrider and stuff like that. Some great, lines of different areas you can go. But it was also just the material. I think, you got Kevin J. Ennis and Michael Stackpole and, of course, Timothy Zahn all drawing heavily from these books, because that's all that was out there for reference. And even Lucasfilm were going to these books for reference for the amount of stuff. I mean, even to the point of Revenge of the Sith, going through the Imperial source book and going, wow, that's what a walker with wheels would look like. Ralph McQuarrie already had that down, and they obviously went from there. So there's so many different amazing things that they had in there. And I think it was Shadowrun, the Phaser Corporation one, from the same, obviously, Battletech, sorry. And so when they ran D6, and that's when I went, well, okay, maybe this system can work. But then in comes 3rd edition D&D, and I'm like, D20. Oh, mate, tell you.
Another show that I'm the master of ceremonies for is the Geek Supreme, and the 3 hosts on there, Scott Murray and Jeff McGee and Regina Davis. It's more of an NPR style kind of, I award them points based on things that I like that they've said, or that are strong and opinionated or resonate, maybe opposite even what I feel, but I applaud their courage. We did an episode a few shows back. On occasion, we have somebody we call the lucky listener, and whoever the Geek Supreme is, whoever wins that episode, the lucky listener wins a prize pack of stuff. And so for Han Solo, we had a bunch of Han Solo gear we accumulated, and we did a Dungeons and Dragons style role playing game where I put them into 4 different rooms, and they had to figure out how to defeat the boss or get out of it or something. And I worked up all this intricate dice system and all this stuff. And then when we start recording it, it's like, okay, this isn't working. I'm just going to go down to a D20. D4, D6. I create all these random number generators and all these character sheets and armor and
Love it. Absolutely love it. That's the thing is, it's so every system that comes up, it's got its own iconic thing. And I think what's great for me is now we've got this new range of games, starting with Edge of the Empire and the X-Wing miniatures game. But what is great about it is the narrative dice system that Fantasy Flight Games have. And our dear friend and fellow writer of Star Wars, that is right in the market, is Keith Capel, who works on those books. And Keith, a number of times, says, it's an interesting system because no one had ever really tried to do something without numbers, for starters. And, it really puts the playability of games back to characters, back to the players, and less to the GMs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just taught my nephew how to play the X-Wing game the other day, and that really is revolutionary. The idea of just success or failure, not, you got to beat this table and all this stuff, and then roll to see how many missiles hit and all this and everything. It's really intuitive, and once you get used to it, the play is fast. But I have not. Well, before I say this, I actually had the old West End Games X-Wing fighter game.
Oh wow!
Yeah, there was one out, and maybe it's somewhere. I mean, I don't know. I had a ton of Magic cards too, and my mother, she said, I threw those things out. They were just nothing but portholes to the devil. I was like, what? Because about 3 years ago, I went into a gaming store and I said, oh yeah, I used to have this card. They said, you do? Yeah, I think I have like 5 of them. What? If you can find them, bring them here. And I'm like, okay, by your non-poker face reaction to that, I feel like I should find them. And so I said, hey, Mom, you remember all those Magic cards I used to have? Oh, yeah, I threw them out. What? Yeah, I threw them out. I didn't it said Magic. I'm like, okay. Because I kind of grew up in a, I wouldn't say super fundamentalist, strict household, but at the time there was a lot of, backmasking of records, and which, by the way, if you have ever backmasked Stairway to Heaven, don't do it by yourself late at night. It's really creepy. A bunch of friends of mine had a 4-track, and we started doing that to every song we could think of, and it was creepy. But so there was a lot of kind of knee-jerk reactions to this kind of stuff, and one of the things was the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. I was forbidden to watch that, actually, and growing there was this. I'll tell you why. There was an evangelical tract series called Chick Tracts, and the guy that founded this, his name was Jack Chick. Now, I'm going to say his intentions were good. He's trying to do what he feels is right, but they tended to not investigate the subjects that they were talking about. One of them was a tract called Dark Dungeons, and everybody's sitting around playing Dungeons and Dragons. Well, the game master, who looks like a witch, or I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. What I would imagine looks like the archetypical kind of Elvira, kind of sexy looking witch. She says, I'm sorry, Dark Dagger, you rolled 4, which means you died from poison. And of course the person playing Dark Dagger is like, no, my character. And she's like, you have to leave us now. Get out. No. Well, then later they hang themselves. So, so the friends starting to get into it, and this woman's trying to use it as this gateway to real occultism and all this stuff. And I'm like, now I look back at it, it's just fun, it's just a game. And so Star Wars, the West End game, that was actually my first role-playing game, because my parents were kind of like, well, it's Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars is okay, right? And so that kind of allowed me to kind of get into role-playing games, because at the time they thought that if I just read one page, well, you're just going to toss yourself off a building, or something. Because of that track. I'll send it to you later, man. It's in fact, it's such a fan. It's got such a kind of a cult following that Dungeons and Dragons hardcore players bought the rights to make a film, and they were going to make the film exactly like the track a few years ago. Yeah, they bought it from Jack Chick. So that's a crazy little side story. If you can find it, it's pretty wild, man.
They've had some wild ones out here in Australia. Back in the early 90s, I was in high school, and there's a group of guys that used to play in a local cemetery, because they thought that it was Ravenloft, I think it was, that game that so right into obviously the vampires and all that sort of stuff, and and anyway they thought, well, playing it in a local library isn't as exciting as playing it at midnight in a graveyard. I don't know how that works, but they even, which was really bad, is that they went into, I think it was like a crematorium, so it was, where cremated area for families and stuff. They had like this little garden, and these guys would sit there at night time with, coffee and all that goodness goes on, food, and literally just sit there and play RPGs of Ravenloft.
Wow.
I'm like, what the hell? I mean, I don't condone that sort of stuff, that's for sure, but bloody hell.
I know. I mean, hey, who doesn't like to have a picnic in, a funeral home? It's always time for jollies and laughs. It's,
I know, right? But our first game was actually Palladium's Robotech, so they're kind of used to playing with multiple different dice and all that sort of thing, and it was a mechanic that obviously is still used right up until they lost the Robotech license recently. But I've got to say, we've played Rifts as well, which is their fantasy and mecha hybrid sort of thing, and that was a fun little game in itself too.
Rifts was cool because it combined so many elements of all the fandom kind of geek out kind of stuff. You could have cyborgs, you could have magic users, you could have all this other stuff. It was a great game. Golly, it's been forever since I've even thought about it. We used to play Vampire the Masquerade, Rift.
Oh, nice.
I want to say Cyberpunk, was that one?
I think so. Yeah. This sounds like a Fantasy Flight game, actually, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I used to play a fun game called Car Wars. From Steve Jackson Games. That was where it was kind of like in the future, and if you get your hand on an internal combustion engine, man, you were tops. Everybody else had these electric engines that just weren't as powerful and couldn't drive the weapons as well. But if you had an electric engine and you happen to get your hands on a laser or something like that, that would be really cool. So you'd outfit your car with weapons and just battle it out. So great, so simple, so fun.
Brilliant, isn't it? I may even remember, there's a game when I first got my new PC. This is just after high school, and it was called Carmageddon. It was kind of like a little bit like it's like Mad Max. A cross between that and Death Race 2000. You just do up your car, put blades on the wheels or whatever it was, to take out other cars. And it was literally that. It was Armageddon on cars. It was nuts.
How fun.
Weird, but fun.
Maybe we need that. Maybe that would be a good release, is if we could have just more people enter demolition derbies and stuff.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy.
I'd do it.
Same here, mate. I tell you,
it'd be crazy fun, man. So is there a chance I'm going to get hurt? Possibly. Okay, let's do it.
Now, before we get into chatting about, obviously, the release of Solo: A Star Wars Story, very soon we'll chat about your thoughts on the film. But Star Wars Resistance has released a trailer, and we're getting a real sense that this is a bit more fun and light-hearted romp for Star Wars. But at the same time, we've got some very, very fast starfighters or jets or whatever we're going to call these things.
Yes.
They're planet-bound. But what's your thoughts on this one, mate?
So, it's weird as far as the animation aspect. I'm more excited about getting more story. Now, I'm a little tempered with that because I understand that the medium they have to release the story in is something that they can't go too adult or too dark. And by adult, I don't mean, hey, you know what? Let's work in a love scene in Star Wars. No. Just get out of here with all that. I'm talking about just kind of the heavy, dark overtones that you typically see happen throughout the life of a Star Wars series. Let's look at Clone Wars. Starts out pretty lighthearted. Hey, Snips. Hey, Sky Guy, and everything. And then at the end, it's like, I'm leaving the Jedi Order. What? And then, and it goes kind of really dark, right?
Yeah.
And if you think about the kids that started out watching it, they kind of grew up with it. So it's kind of teaching them that not everything's always awesome out there, and to a certain extent, that there's good times and there's bad. And the same with Rebels. I mean, it started out pretty lighthearted, pretty fun and everything, but towards the end, I mean, good gosh, Kanan, wow, that's tough. It's a tough one, man. And, so I feel like it's going to be the same way. I think it's going to start off nice and lighthearted, and then as the series and show ages with maybe the new viewers, they'll take it a little more into what really drives that whole, dark aspect of Star Wars. You got to have conflict, right? Mm-hmm. It's like my daughters and I, we talk a lot, and I said, you can't have a great hero without what? A great villain, And so that dark aspect is the conflict, the push and pull. I mean, it's the minor chord, it's the disharmony, and the heroes are trying to resolve it to the major chord. They're trying to make it better. So I think I'm interested from that point of view. Animation-wise, I understand I appreciate and understand what they're doing because I love anime, and it's almost like the coloring and the style. Have you ever seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Yeah. Okay,
it kind of reminds me of that, but it also has a lot of aspects to, it feels like kind of like some of the old Robotech, with the real detailed mecha looks. I thought that the ships themselves looked phenomenal. I think it's going to be kind of cool that this is going to be almost like a little Cloak and Dagger Cold War style to the series is the vibe I'm getting. They're placing this kid in with this racing team. Could we run into Han Solo? I don't know. Because he was doing racing circuits and stuff, but I don't know if this is this way too past that, or is this when he was?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. I mean, you're probably more likely to, have, a big yacht turn up and go, and you'll see big smuggler turn up, and you'll be like, "How you doing, Chewbacca? You still hanging around this loser?" I mean, yeah, more likely I think to see that or Hondo and Aka, or something like that, rock up.
That'd be cool.
Which I'd be happy with.
Yeah. Oh, so you want to race?
And what's great about it too is when you think about it, what we're seeing there is that, again, as you say, the ships, I think, pretty much are mecha in the kind of way we're looking at it. And,
sure.
It's, I looked at like in Star Wars terms of what this reminds me of. If you take your mind back to a certain game that came out for most systems, I think it was Nintendo and, if I remember it was PlayStation, I remember the other one, but it was Episode 1 Racer, which is that pod racer game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is what this feels like.
Yeah. Man, I was hardcore addicted to that game.
That's a great game. I loved it. Those tracks were huge. And the minute I skimmed the pod or something like that on the wall, it always used to, rub me the wrong way. I'm like, all right, that's it. And I'd reset the machine and just start again, even if it was like 6 races in.
Look at the paint. Yeah, man. I mean, I think that it's going to be fun from that aspect. I think, hey, let's face it, there's also going to be a lot of potential for some fun video games or maybe some fun supporting merchandise, you might say.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always looking forward to new ships. I'm always looking forward to new Star Wars tech.
Speaking of ships, I want to get your thoughts on this. Now, I loved quite a few of the ships in the last film, Last Jedi, of the sequel trilogy. Mm-hmm. But what did you think of the new A-Wing? I want to get your thoughts on the design of that, and did it fit with the legend of the original A-Wing?
it's a little sleeker. I think it's a little longer and not as beefy. I love the A-Wing. I mean, that's like one of my favorite ships. In fact, it kind of reminds me of the 1979 Fiat X19 I used to drive because it was so little. The thing like came up to your waist. I mean, so when you're sitting in it, you're just so close to the ground and it feels so compact. I kind of like the way they updated the blaster cannons on the side. I thought that looked good. That's one of the things I think I really like about how they're changing up the ships. They're making them a little more modern, but they're not, let's just say it's sort of like it's not like a 1979, you'd say a Ford Mustang versus a 89 Mustang or something. They're not like doing a radical kind of shift in the fundamental way that the design looks, and I can't remember what point in time. I just remember that all of a sudden it was like the 80s and everything had to go crazy. So they got away from that classic kind of body styling and went to this new weird, I don't know. I never really liked that mid 80s style that they went to, but yeah. So I like it. I think if they do something, the goal is to not make us notice it, and so good job.
Definitely. And I think the biggest thing is there's something that we've just put online, and I'll put these out later in the episode for you Fantha Trackers listeners out there. We'll be talking about some of the Ralph McQuarrie artwork out there, which of course he designed all the fighters that you like in the original series. But in between films, when George was in his little hiatus and working on scripts, Ralph was like, well, I got to work, man. Ralph's got to eat. So Ralph's got to eat, so he's going to go and do Galactica. Ralph's got to eat, so he's going to go and do a Buck Rogers, but really it was all just Galactica drawings. But we got Vipers, and we got a concept of Vipers, which would also become Buck Rogers ships. And
yes, I
think it's the Buck Rogers concept of the Viper that really fleshed out a lot of the A-Wings and stuff that Ralph would later make, I
never really thought about that, but yeah, they've got that kind of sloping nose. The Buck Rogers ship has those two, big turbine nacelle kind of looking things on the side, but yeah, you shorten that up. Yeah, that's a good point, man. I never really made that connection.
And for some reason, it has the same laser sound. I wonder.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, listen.
Wow, yeah, that's crazy.
Well, I just picked up this little bad boy a couple of weeks ago. Of course, this is Buck Rogers in the 25th century. The dreaded second season, of course, with Hawk, who is Hawkman.
Yes, Hawk.
It's Hawk. But
I remember when Buck Rogers had his bird partner mate in his ship, and Hawk's got these two claws that rip through the top of Buck Rogers' ship, and they're piercing her, and he's like, "You're killing her," and everything. It's like, killing her at that speed and that much force, he ripped her in half just by, let alone decompressurizing the entire cabin. I mean, come on, but even back then I kind of, scrunched up my nose at that, but I was a huge Buck Rogers. I mean, my sister, I remember she used to every day before school, "You want me to do your hair feathered like Buck Rogers?" Yeah. And it was so wonderful because I had so much hair back then. But it was so long and luxurious. But yeah, man, that's a great find. Have you ever seen Rick and Morty?
I've seen bits and pieces of it. Have they done a Buck Rogers special, have they?
They have a character in there called, I'm always going to butcher it. I think it's Bird Person. Mm-hmm. And it looks and talks just like Hawkman.
Oh my goodness.
It's worth it. It's kind of rough. I mean, it's really rough, but the comedy's just tops. I mean, it's brilliant.
Oh, that's it. You sold me. I'm gonna have to go and check it out. Yeah, bitty. but
hey, Buck.
Hey, Buck. Yeah. You know what I love?
The voice of all my favorite cartoon characters growing up. So of course that struck a chord with me.
Of course it did.
Mel Blanc, right?
Mel Blanc. You know what's even funnier though? I was watching the first season, and I haven't seen it in years. The remasters aren't that great. I mean, it's as clear as it's going to get with the stock that they've got. But the second episode has one of my favorite actors. It goes from like kind of like a really tiny, soft tone to big, explosive moments. And that's, of course, Jack Palance. My goodness, I can't believe he's in there. Yeah. He played like a hood who's running an operation for slaves and stuff like that, who's like a priest or sort of figure, a pastor maybe. But his hands go bright red and he's able to get into people's minds. I'm going to get in your mind.
Yes, I remember that. Wow.
Oh, it's crazy.
Now, talk about Man, I had not thought about that forever, but for some reason I keep waking up with that in front of my face and screaming and sweat and terror. And I can never explain to anybody what happened to my past. But now I know it's all from Buck Rogers.
That's Buck Rogers. It kind of like, when I think Jack Palance, he's got that stunted sort of dialogue because, he's the theatrical sort of guy. He always was. But, it'd be kind of like putting Christopher Walken in Star Wars, which he almost was as Han Solo, Here we are on this here Falcon, and I'm making my way to the landing ramp down here. Chewie, hi, see you later. It just wouldn't work.
That would be bizarre.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it'd be as wild as that. Michael Caine, come on your Falcon to go, well, it's this Kessel Run into a parsec. What the hell is a parsec? You wouldn't get around it whether it's going to make it through. But no, I think Resistance looks great. I love the Robotech-like feel to it. It's obvious. All of us that have grown up with it can see it. But the other one I see in there is there's a Goose character. There's a Mitchell character. It's Top Gun.
Oh, wow. Okay. Top Gun. That's interesting. That is interesting. I hadn't made that connection about that too, but you're right, I guess, it's interesting because I've been more focused on paying attention to the live action series that's coming out because I think that's going to really kind of hit a home run.
Oh, yeah.
As far, but the anime, it's wonderful. It's something that's a medium that's been done before, and I guess the live action hasn't been, which is why I'm a little more stoked about getting to the live action series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think really the closest we had is my dear pal Eric Walker's film and the film that they killed him in. As of course, Caravan of Courage and the Battle for Endor was about as close as you're going to get it with, obviously, with those being TV films and stuff like that. But no, I'm super keen to see what they're going to do with it. Now, to give you a little bit of Easter egg with the Top Gun reference, where do you think they get Goose from?
Pinching someone in the butt?
Nope. Mad Max. Mad Max.
Oh, okay. I'm having trouble remembering.
Okay, so the original Mad Max, Max is main character, obviously, but his offsider, the blonde motorcycle rider, was Goose. So he's the wingman.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so that was an homage to that movie.
It was to Mad Max.
Awesome. And now, the Lady Taxus' father actually worked on the Enterprise when they were filming that.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay, now you get that.
He's got some stories I can tell you later.
Oh, wow.
They're fun.
Gotta love it.
Yeah.
Oh,
basically, don't build a PVC pipe camera stand behind an F-14 when it's hitting the afterburner. Yeah. It doesn't really work too well.
You gotta love it. Now, before we get right into Solo, another thing that's come up recently on both TV and I think it's in Amazon, if I remember right, is the AMC series, James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction, which, of course, George just decided to come out of his little retirement for a bit of a 15-minute chat with James Cameron, the amazing director of Avatar, etc. But George was quite straight up about what he wanted to do with a sequel trilogy, talking about macrobiotic life and talking about the wheels of the Force. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
It's just bizarre enough to work. I don't know, man. I mean, it sounds like real far out late 1960s experiment science fiction, I just don't, I I can't really conceive of how they would play that out. I mean, would it literally exist in another plane where you just have like this Felucia-like looking kind of environment where everything just looks so bizarre and stuff like, I don't know, like a white room exists where all of a sudden you're all alone speaking and you hear your voice coming back at you from no direction all at once. I mean, it's just almost over the top, you know? Part of me kind of says, I'm kind of happy that didn't happen. no offense intended, but because I could just picture an entire theater full of Star Wars fans all giving the RCA dog salute to the screen, just twisting their head. What? I mean, how would you even explain it? Would you just dump right into something like that? I mean,
right.
I guess that's what he's done. And then what would the trailer read like? Anakin has decided to go in for his annual physical.
You know what's funny about it too is that he then went on to talk about, of course, the big word from episode 1, of course, talking about more about the symbiotic relationships, which I think even Liam Neeson was bringing up in a lot of the behind the scenes interviews that he did on The Phantom Menace. Is that the film is all about living together for mutual advantage, different cultures, different walks of life. And the fact that you can coexist, and it is a much smarter film than people give it credit for. Again, he was trying to hit that sort of young, demographic that Star Wars originally did. And again, there's a generation that's grown up with Phantom Menace, but it's such a clever film.
Skywalking through Neverland.
Hey everyone, are you looking for a fun-filled and family-friendly Star Wars and Disney podcast? If you answered yes, then join me and my sweetie wife on Skywalking Through Neverland.
You can hear us every week. We are Skywalking Through Neverland wherever podcasts are played.
We look forward to having you in our Skywalker family.
Well, it's been a while since we've done a book review here on the show, but here, episode 10, we're going to be chatting about a couple of books that have come out, and one in particular tonight we're going to be looking at is written by somebody that hasn't done Star Wars. No, that's right. We're talking about James Cameron. Now, of course, he's done his AMC TV series, which has been out with a limited number of episodes, called James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction. Now, this is a great look at science fiction history, science fiction fact as it is now, and of course some of the leading science fiction writers and developers of film, and vice versa. Some of the stars are in this book, and it is great. This little book that he's put together is a companion piece to the AMC series, and you really have to check it out. You've got Guillermo del Toro, George Lucas, Christopher Nolan, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ridley Scott, and Steven Spielberg. I mean, just imagine them around a round table, eh? Now, of course, this is the interview that George gives, where he gives a little bit of an idea about what he wanted to do in the sequel trilogy. Of course, we're talking about the macrobiotic world of the Wills he wanted to get into. And, of course, talks also about how he thinks that the Force itself and those around it, he relates it to bacteria. Because, of course, we're talking about some of the great ideas and concepts he came up with in the prequel trilogy. Now, I don't want to spoil it, but you've got to go and check it out. James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction.
Welcome to My Saga, a Star Wars fan podcast. Each week, we'll bring you stories of how Star Wars impacted so many fans from around the globe, along with Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion.
We would be honored if you would join us.
So grab a scarf soda, deploy the garrison, put your feet up, and join us here today at the My Saga podcast.
Over the last couple of weeks on the Fantha from Down Under, we've been looking at my thoughts on Solo: A Star Wars Story and the thoughts of many of the guests I've had on the show and their thoughts, obviously, too, on this amazing film. So I also wanted to know what you, the listeners, thought of Solo: A Star Wars Story. And I put out onto the Twitter universe to get your reactions, and here's some of them now. So Neil Lowry says he loved the ease in which its Star Wars fun flowed throughout that movie. Didn't have to shout Star Wars, it hummed it. Towson says, loved the Han and Chewie meeting and building a friendship thing. Chewie sitting in the co-pilot seat for the first time made me cry. And of course, more. So it's amazing that the both of you, have got the same sort of feeling I have too, where it's, it's calling back to, I think, some of the memories we have from the original trilogy, of whether it's in the Falcon or just having those feelings of, the Star Wars moments we hold dear already. But, what's interesting now is, too, that this is the first time it really happened, because this is earlier in the timeline. And it's interesting that it's calling back to earlier times for us, but also, as you've said there, Neil, too, it's the Star Wars feel. And I think that we haven't had this feeling in a while, too, that it's really getting that fun sort of adventure quality back. Death by Sabre says, let me get the Blu-ray next week to watch it, and I'll get back to you. Well, that's fair enough. Darth Taxus says, I really, really loved it. And, of course, you can hear Darth Taxus on this episode with his further thoughts on it. Dobermum says, I love the look on Han's face the first time he lays eyes on the Falcon. Loved the building relationship between Han and Chewie. Loved it all. Give me more. Well, let's hope, we get more, and Ron Howard come back to direct more. I'd love it too. And Yoda Bauer says, finally, Space Octopus. And I can't agree more. I think one of the things I love about Star Wars is that each time, we have a new anomaly in space or a different thing, we had it in, I suppose, Empire Strikes Back with the space slug. We've seen it in the Clone Wars with those sort of whale-like creatures in and around the gas planet in one of the first episodes with the Y-Wings. I want to see more of that too, where, what kind of creatures are out there in space that, again, can live off the planets and just literally in space itself. It's amazing. There's a whole universe out there in Star Wars to discover. And let's just hope from here on in we get more Solo: A Star Wars Story sequels. I want more too.
And that brings this podcast to an end for today, here on Fantha Tracks Radio's The Fantha from Down Under. Next week, we've got Alan Zorg back from Idiots Array podcast for part 2 of his chat with us here on the show. And, of course, we've got much, much more Star Wars to chat about. And, of course, my review of the Solo: A Star Wars Story Blu-ray release. And I can't wait to get into all the special features and deleted scenes and whatever else that Ron Howard's given us on that amazing show. And, of course, the show itself is a movie, of course. Solo: A Star Wars Story. Anyway, we'll catch you next Saturday on The Fantha from Down Under. May the Force be with you.